Well, greetings and salutations, and welcome once again to the Newsman Weekly Podcast, episode number 51. Thanks again to everybody for joining us today. We know you got a lot of choices in this media-crazy world. There's a million podcasts or more out there, and even an old duffer like me listens to a bunch of them each and every week. So we're just glad you choose to sit down and spend time with us each and every week as we close in on our one-year anniversary coming up later this month. So please, if you haven't done it already, subscribe to the show and give it a great rating. We'd all like to keep our jobs, and that would be helpful if we could maximize the audience. As we start today, I want to thank local country singer Luke Watson for writing and singing the classic song "Smoke and Drink," a song that quickly became this show's theme song for reasons that become apparent if you listen to us on a regular basis. Yes. My thanks also to the great folks at Relax It's Just Coffee, our proud sponsors and great partners to the Newsman Weekly. Every day just starts better with great coffee, and our friend Paul Kimmerling and his baristas at Relax simply have the best in town at 105 North Main Street in downtown Mansfield. So ignore all of that construction happening on Main Street. Get over to Relax, get inside and get a donut from Blackbird Bakery located inside the coffee shop. And while you're there, patronize all the other damn businesses up and down Main Street that are suffering right now while this great project is underway. Anyway, there's no better way to start your day than at Relax It's Just Coffee. Tell them the newsman from Richland Source sent you. I am joined again today by Zach Heiser, the executive producer of the Newsman Weekly, who's been with me since this craziness started, as well as the show's official videographer, Hayden Gray, in his second full week in his new capacity. Could be his last. We'll see if this week he can actually spell my name correctly in the subtitles of the video.
It's not my fault that when I send it over to you to look at, you didn't go through and look at it.
I was on vacation last week. I came in to record the show.
Vacation.
The last thing I should have to worry about is whether the guy doing the video knows how to spell the name of the guy who started the damn podcast.
It's etched in permanently.
How was your vacation?
Oh, it was lovely.
I saw you
more
active.
active.
Do a life and culture story.
I did.
While you were out.
I did.
That seems like
He's more active on vacation.
Right.
Well, we did the podcast on Monday, and then I went and previewed the children's show at the Mansfield Playhouse, The Little Mermaid. Is it The Little Mermaid? Yeah. Shows tend to run together in my mind. But yeah, those kids, they deserve that kind of
they do.
recognition, as we used to say in the business.
Yeah, you just can't stop.
No, we need to tack on some hours back to this vacation time.
You've already wasted 10 minutes of my time right now, Hayden.
What else did you do on vacation?
Nothing.
Nothing. Okay.
Watched a lot of documentaries. Took my granddaughters to see that musical at the Playhouse, and much to my amazement, the youngest one, Miss Faith, who's not even 2 years old, sat there on Marcy's lap and watched the entire show and never made a noise.
Wow. That's incredible.
So we sat in the front row, and Faith and Emma both enjoyed the show, and we'll see if Emma could get bitten by the acting bug. We'll see. She's going into the second grade, so
in the fam.
Yeah, could be out there, So what'd you guys do this weekend, Hayden? I know you were down at the state track meet in Columbus. I read something on the Slack channel over the weekend talking about the many hours you put in at the track. So talk about that experience.
It was my fourth year, so I'm not quite up there to the veterans like Kurt or any of our peers in the area. But it was my fourth year down there. It was the first time I've ever spent the whole day there on Saturday on finals day.
Sun.
Yeah, shout out to Lexington for having the last event of the day. But they performed really well, so our athletes did good. It made it worth it. Got some sun. It was fun.
Yeah, Big Lex finished second in the state in boys and in Division I.
Yeah, no, it's no small feat. There, you can. Every division's got its talent, but it's a perfect way to see the differences between athleticism right in front of you as they progress throughout the day. And to do that in D1, man, they don't get as much attention as they deserve. So good for them.
Yeah, years ago when I covered such things, I would compare finishing times in D1 versus D2 versus D3 just to see, how things would have turned out. But I'll be honest, taking pictures and for those of you who have sons and daughters who are participating, please turn your ears off for a minute. It's not as bad as swimming. I mean, so look, taking pictures at a swim meet. Oh, look, they're swimming.
Even though they
use
use
swimming.
The beep that swim uses now instead of starting guns.
Yeah, but look, they're running. I mean, it's a tough thing. It's not like football where you can get a picture of some spectacular hit or a big play. I mean, they're running.
The reactions are what
Right.
make it worth it.
It's going to be a lot of walking around too for state track. Like,
yeah,
or,
it is.
Or is it more than like up and down a football field?
Well, it just depends. I mean, like I've been down there on certain years where I didn't leave from the finish line because the majority of local athletes are doing running events, but we had athletes from across our coverage areas. We had some doing shot put. So it was a little bit of a mixture, but yeah, I mean, I saw those parents are dedicated, just like in swimming, because I saw someone make the point too that some people, I mean, if your kid competes in like the 100-meter, and depending on where you're traveling from, you're going to see 10 seconds of your kid run, for probably multiple hours of travel. It's dedication.
Well, as you'll find out someday, if your son gets involved in wrestling, there's nothing longer than a junior high wrestling tournament when you have to be there at 7:30 or whatever. That's for brutal. Weigh-ins, and you're there until 10 o'clock at night. And if you're lucky, your son might wrestle 3 or 4 times in that 12 hours that you're there.
Hot, sweaty, smelly.
You speak from experience, it sounds like.
Enough about me, Zach. What'd you do?
I went to a Guardians game this weekend.
Did they win?
Fun. They lost the game I was at. So, but Jose Ramirez had a home run. That was pretty cool. And then they lost in extra innings.
Free baseball.
Yeah. One inning of it.
Yeah. I hate that rule, by the way. Extra innings.
The ghost runner.
Yeah,
I kind of like
runner,
it.
I hate that.
Like.
Of course, you guys not seeing eye to eye on something.
Of course, you hate it.
It's not baseball.
Well.
Oh, look.
They don't do it in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Which might be even weirder.
Then why do you do it? Why do you do it? Why do you do it at all?
I don't know. It does make things kind of interesting and extras because you see games where you get like, all right, so the away team's going to get a run, but you really got to score 2 just in case. Of course, I think in our case they got, I don't know if they lost 4-3, but the Guardians didn't do anything with their ghost runner in the bottom of the 10th. So, and then Sunday I did some yard work and it's a pretty low key weekend other than the trip to Cleveland.
All right, well, very good. Folks, we have another great show for you today. In a few minutes, we're going to be joined by Clint Knight, one of the most unique personalities I know in Richland County. In his day job, he's the Workforce Development Director for the Richland Area Chamber and Economic Development. That's an interesting job, but it just kind of scratches the surface of Clint Knight. Clint is a native of Georgia, a state that I called home for several years while growing up. His college degree is in music, percussion, I believe. He has performed in stage shows all around the area, especially through his own Valley Media and Productions company. But oh no, that's not all. Clint and Jacob Horde also host their own Ohio Dirt Track podcast at SprintCarUnlimited.com. Now, and it's, I forget what season it's in, but he's got like 129 episodes. Yeah. So he's like way ahead of us.
Got us numbered a little bit.
Yeah, we're going to ask Clint about all the things he's involved in and what promises to be a really great discussion. But before then, we do have some news for you. Morrow County Prosecutor Andrew Wick said he plans to seek the death penalty in the May 26th killing of County Sheriff's Deputy Daniel Schurer. Wick spoke during a press conference after a county grand jury handed down a 14-count indictment against Brian Wilson, who allegedly shot and killed a deputy who was responding to a reported domestic dispute. Quote, after consultation with the deputy sheriff's family, law enforcement community, and review of the facts and circumstances around this case upon conviction, it would be my intention to seek the death penalty, Wick said. Bond for Wilson was set at $5 million during an initial court appearance in Morrow County Municipal Court when he was just charged with aggravated murder before the grand jury had a chance to review it. Under Ohio law, the murder of a law enforcement officer is one of the crimes for which a prosecutor can seek the death penalty in the state of Ohio. Other charges in the multi-count indictment include felonious assault, domestic violence, improperly discharging a firearm at or into a habitat, possession of criminal tools, and using a weapon while intoxicated.
Don't do that, kids.
No.
What is the death penalty these days? They like electric chair or they?
I can't remember the last. No, they don't do the
Yeah, I was gonna
electric
say
anymore.
that's
It's
gone.
usually lethal injection, but it's
okay.
been a long, long time
Since we've had one.
since we've had one. Mansfield, speaking of prisons, though, Mansfield Fire Department paramedics treated and transported 3 inmates who overdosed at the Richland Correctional Institution last week. All 3 were in the same housing unit when the overdoses occurred, according to prison officials. All were taken to the hospital and later returned to the state prison on the city's north side. The Mansfield firefighters IAFF Local 266, which represents employees in the city's fire department, drew attention to the incident with a post on its Facebook page Wednesday morning. It said crews worked alongside prison staff to deliver critical care under challenging and evolving conditions. All patients were stabilized, treated, and transported as needed. They said this incident deserves recognition. It underscores the harsh realities that first responders face every day and the importance of a well-staffed and equipped department for these high-risk calls. The Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections has contracted with the Mansfield Fire Department to provide emergency ambulance services for the Mansfield Correctional Institution and Ricky since back in 2020, according to a contract that we got through a public records request. Per that contract, ODRC pays the department on a per-service basis, rates ranging from $996 for basic life support to $1,713 for advanced life support 2, plus $21 for mileage. That agreement expires on June 30th, but Mansfield Fire Chief Dan Crow said the department intends to extend the agreement.
Just all sunshine and rainbows in News of the Week.
Well, yeah.
This week.
This one's a little bit better.
Speaking of sunshine, rainbows,
Yeah.
and wind, trustees in 11 of Richland County's 18 townships have told county commissioners they are not interested in the development of wind and solar projects in their townships. County Commissioner Dale Banks said the townships responded, talking about saying they wanted to restrict development of wind farms and or solar facilities in their unincorporated areas. Those 11 townships are Plymouth, Blooming Grove, Sharon, Jackson, Franklin, Weller, Mifflin, Monroe, Troy, Perry, and Jefferson. Commissioners had sent a letter to all 18 townships back in February soliciting feedback and or official action on wind and solar. No action was necessary in response to the letter for townships who might support such facilities. Any proposed wind or solar facilities that would file an application with the Ohio Power Siting Board would be considered on a case-by-case basis by the township in consideration, as well as commissioners. Now, Hayden, you covered that, so talk a little bit about what the 11 of those 18 townships meant when they said no thanks.
Yeah, so I mean, essentially, the ORC is the Ohio Revised Code is kind of what gives commissioners the end-all be-all authority here to take such action to restrict or prohibit these kind of developments in those areas. And the reason they sent that letter was they didn't really feel that it was their place to make this decision, just the 3 of them. They wanted to actually talk to the townships. So these places are basically, it's honestly kind of cut and dry compared to a lot of the time. It's not, but they essentially are just ultimately saying they don't want those unincorporated areas, which there's a good chunk of land. I would be interested to find out how much total land that makes up in our 18 townships, but this essentially just gives the word that they don't want that coming into their community. I haven't heard whether all 18 have responded yet. Those 11 were just the ones that at least responded saying they're not interested. The other 7, like it mentioned, they don't have to say anything, but I'd be curious to find out if they're in support of it or not.
So is it an all or nothing thing? Like Richland County won't do these solar and wind facilities or like at all because the majority of townships responded this way? Or is it like they just were getting input and now they're going to consider that and as far as where they put those facilities?
So, no, yeah, it's not this is just these townships. It only affects the townships within the county. It wouldn't set necessarily a standard for the entire county. These are just for those places. Okay. So it's not completely saying that it could never happen, but moving forward, if they're one of these that have restricted or prohibited it, they would have to deal with it on a case by case.
All right. Well, you know what? That's enough for now. Let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll be joined by the Renaissance man himself, Clint Knight. Please stay with us. Well, welcome back to the Newsman Weekly. We're now joined by Clint Knight, workforce development guru, musician promoter, and also a dirt track racing fan, a Renaissance man for all times, I think. Good morning, Clint. Thanks for joining us today. And are you ready to be grilled on all of your life activities?
Bring it on. I'm excited to be here.
All right, let's start with something simple. How did a Georgia boy end up in Ohio, and how did a guitar player who loves country music end up in something called workforce development?
That's kind of a very rambling road. But my degree is in music, and I had this dream of being a professional musician. So at one point after a career in the restaurant industry and trying to teach school, I ended up in Atlanta. I moved to Atlanta to try to play music for a living. And I crossed paths with a woman who grew up in Belleville.
Okay.
She had just graduated from Wittenberg, and Gwinnett County Schools in Atlanta had recruited teachers from Wittenberg. So her and I think 5 or 6 of her friends had moved to Atlanta to teach. And in the middle of trying to play music for a living, I met my wife and ended up getting married, and that required a real job. So
I was going to say, how
Met your Yoko.
How quickly did your wife say, this music thing is fun, but...
that only took probably 4 or 5 months.
Yeah. It's like when I met my wife, I was a sports editor, and the first year we were married, I was home one night in the month of March, and she said, this sports thing is kind of interesting, but
Right.
What else you got?
Yeah. So I literally walked into a staffing agency in Atlanta and in the middle of 2008 and said, look, I need a 9 to 5, 8 to 5, whatever you got. And they paired me up with a software company that was looking for a receptionist at the time. And that somehow I took that job, and then I wound up an HR generalist, and that's how I got where I am now.
So the other thing I was going to ask you, because I lived in Georgia for 8 or 9 years growing up, and I didn't have any choice. I was a kid when my dad got out of the Navy, and we moved from Albany, Georgia, to Ohio, so I didn't have any choice in the matter either. But how are beloved Georgia Bulldogs going to be this year? I'm very concerned. We lost the quarterback to Miami, and
I personally don't consider that one a loss. Sorry, Carson, but I think we've got a lot of opportunity. This team is not going to be as seasoned as what we've had, but coaches will tell you it's not a rebuilding year. We're just reloading, I think is what Kirby would tell you. But I don't know. I think it's got promise. We'll probably go deep in the playoffs.
All right.
I'm not going to tell you we're going to win another national championship, but
it's going to get harder and harder to do that, I think, as they keep expanding the playoffs, and that's a whole nother story. We could do a whole nother show on just the recent court decision or the agreement on now colleges can actually pay their players directly. And all right, let's get back to the task at hand. In the world of economic development, it seems to me like developing the proper workforce doesn't get enough attention. All the media headlines like to talk about, hey, we landed this business, we landed this industry, this store is going to open, this business is opening. I've seen recent headlines about millions of dollars of proposed infrastructure and rezoning hundreds of acres to attract heavier industry. But the simple fact is, none of those companies or businesses are coming here if we don't have workers who are ready to fill those jobs. Now, you may be a bit biased, but how would you rate us on preparing the local workforce, and what can we be doing better?
So, that's the whole chicken or the egg conversation, right? Do you get the business first, or do you get a new industry first, and then train the workforce to meet the needs of that industry? Or does industry come here because of what you already have talent-wise? I mean, we are historically, we're a manufacturing community. We have been for a very long time, and we do that very well. If you talk to my coworker Barrett, he'll tell you we make things out of metal and plastic. That's what we do, and we have that culture, and we have that knowledge. But what we're becoming is a because of the reality of our workforce, which is we're not making as many people nationwide as we have,
Right.
as we did 70 years ago.
I did my part. That's all I'm going to say to that.
I did my part too.
So we're becoming more efficient, and we're learning how to use technology better. So I think what our schools are doing right now at high school level, and our training partners, whether it's adult education or post-secondary college, we have both of the engineering programs at Ohio State and North Central State here. We are working to prepare our workforce to be as efficient as possible through the use of technology. And I think that's something we're doing very well regionally to meet that need. And when I say that need, it's how manufacturing is becoming advanced in the use of technology and robotics and automation. Someone has to program that, someone has to do the maintenance on it, someone has to do the wiring for it, and someone has to figure out how to use it, and analyze the data that it puts out, how it's performing. So we're preparing our workforce to do that because of who we are, right? Now, the other question is, where are we going? What are we going to be 15 years from now? Is it still going to be manufacturing, or is it going to be something else? And what is coming at the base at 179th could be transformational because you have a whole different group of talent and a whole different level of skills that are going to be here, whether they're here part-time or whether they're here full-time.
That's cybersecurity, right?
Yes, cybersecurity. Sorry, I didn't.
No, just for the listeners who may not know.
The guys with their wrenches working on airplane engines are gone, and now we got young people sitting behind computers.
Correct.
Which hopefully they've got new computers since I left that unit back in 2001,
sure
because they were like Radio Shack Tandy 100s. That's all I'm going to say.
So that's going to be I believe that's going to be transformative because that's going to bring families here that don't live here right now, and there's going to be local students who sign up and who join that mission is literally what it is,
right.
And that could be where we go. Are we going to get cybersecurity companies or tech companies because of that? I don't know, but I definitely think it's possible. And I don't even know if that answered all your questions.
Yeah, I think you're good.
Okay.
But it's interesting to me how much industry has changed. Now, my mother worked second shift when I was in high school. She worked second shift at a factory in Cambridge, Ohio. And her job was a place called March Electric, and they built fans for vacuum cleaners. And her job was to sit by an assembly line for 8-9 hours a night, and it was piece rate. You got paid by the amount of pieces you put together. And her job, as these pieces came down the line, was to pick up one round circular object and stick it into another round circular object as it went by. And I said, how do you do that? And she goes, well, I don't recommend it, but I mean, industry has changed so much. You're talking about robotics and stuff. How many light years ahead are we in terms of where we were just 10, 15, 20 years ago?
I mean, it's unrecognizable, I would say, especially in the last 15 to 20 years. Even you think about welding, all the welding that was required by hand 20 years ago. And now, robots do all of it. I mean, I want to be clear. I don't like the whole statement that robots are going to take our jobs, because I don't think that's true. It still requires human interaction, right? You still have that quality element. Some of the automotive manufacturing that's here still requires a lot of eyeballs, right? Looking at it and someone directing that technology. But I think the automation, the level of technology that's occurred over the last 15 to 20 years is pretty incredible.
I mean, I look at things like the tech program in Mansfield City Schools. It really jumps out at me when I cover a high school graduation, and you look at the program and you see the number of kids that aren't even in that school during the day because they're going to Pioneer. I mean, how important are programs like that one, what they've got over in Madison and with Pioneer, in terms of preparing kids that maybe don't want to go to college, but they need technical skills, work skills? Are these schools doing what they need to be doing in terms of getting kids ready for the new work, for the new jobs?
Yeah, and I mean, probably the most important thing they're doing is staying in touch with our local and regional employers, right? The industry that's here, whether it's, we talk a lot about manufacturing, but healthcare, one of the registered nurses, the most in demand job right now in the state of Ohio, and our training partners, if it's Pioneer, Madison, all of those work very closely with our local hospitals to understand what it is that they need, what certifications do they need, are we adequately training them to do the jobs you need them to do, and how do we get them into your building before they graduate from here so they can get hands-on experience and know what it is that they want to be doing. So that's the most important element, is that those training partners are working hand in hand with our regional employers.
That's such an advantage for the kids too,
Yeah.
to get some of that experience and then be able to be like, oh yeah, I know you helped us with this, or you interned or whatever. Like, seems like that's a huge perk for the students.
And before they become employed, before they even do a job interview, they've already they've met doctors,
Right.
They've met other nurses or whatever it is in the facility. So they're building relationships in their time in the building, and that's everything, right? It's I never did that when I was
I didn't either.
when I was going to college for music. It was, you have to be able to play these scales at this tempo without missing a note. That's what I was focused on. I never even thought about like the actual job I was going to be doing. It was a whole different thing. And I don't mean to discredit my education, but like, you asked, one of the first questions was, how did I end up in workforce development? And I think that has a lot to do with it, because that's one of the things that we do really well here, and that we're getting better at nationwide, is giving those students, those young people, the real understanding of what it is. Because we're finding that, well, we've known this for years, but it happens all the time. Somebody, if it's college or if it's a tech program, they could go all the way through. They could spend hours and hours or years of their life learning to do this thing, and then they go do it, and they're like, I don't like this. I don't want to do this.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're getting better at that. With the whole tuition debt conversation, and that's when it really
Right.
became a top of mind conversation. We go years in debt and we waste 4 years of our lives. Some people, not all of us, but we
Right.
get in this situation. We're like, I don't even like this job.
Yeah.
Nope,
Weed
I can
yourself
relate.
out sooner.
But that's one of the things we're doing very well, right? Is we're exposing young people to what it actually is like to work on a robot, or to be in a hospital setting, or whatever it is, to be an automotive tech, to actually change the oil on a car and know if that's what they really want to do or not before they just dive in, just show up one day and go, hey, I think I want to work here. Maybe I do, maybe I don't.
How much are employers still offering in terms of on-the-job training? I mean, obviously, if you've got a young person who has studied, and I'll just use the last example you used, auto mechanics, and they come out and they're actually, they're not professional yet, but they get hired, but they've got training on how to do it. How much is still out there in terms of, you've got a high school diploma, you seem like a nice person, we'll teach you how to do the job?
I think just about any employer would tell you that right now, because the demand is so high for employees. Just about any employer in Richland County, in this area, would say, look, if you're going to come to work, we will train you on what we want, what we need you to do. If you have an interest and you have a drive and you're going to keep coming back, then we will train you. And most of them have really good training programs too.
Mm-hmm.
Especially auto mechanics at this point. There's so much training that comes from the manufacturer, from the brand, whatever that car manufacturer is. it's easy to to get someone through that. So, and through the workforce board, we work with employers to do that specifically to help mitigate some of that cost. That's the point of the WIOA dollars, the Workforce Innovation Opportunity legislation, as federal funds that create dollars to help employers do that training, whether it be what we call incumbent worker training, which is employees that you already have, or on-the-job training, which is employees that you are currently hiring or you want to hire. So I think we do that. I think we do that pretty well, and employers are doing it all the time.
Well, I was even going to mention, to chime in, I know, we talked about some of the things going on in local schools. Obviously, I bring the North County flair to the podcast. So something that I noticed they are working on in Shelby right now is transforming their library in their high school to be this hub for certifications and Industry 4.0 certifications. And how we talked about local employers, I know ArcelorMittal over in Shelby, obviously manufacturing, they're even putting pieces of equipment in that for these students to be able to get familiar with in high school. So I feel like, they're so in need of that, like you said, that they're willing to get in there early before they would even get out of high school to get them familiarized with that equipment.
Yeah, and it continues to grow, right? Region wide. I mean, think about that, the power of that, right? You're in your classroom and you're learning to use a piece of machinery that's branded. It says ArcelorMittal right there on it, right? So it's both ways. The company is exposing themselves to the student in the building, right? And you're learning how to do something. You could stay right here. So that's something we haven't scratched the surface of yet, is how do we keep our students from leaving the region, right, and going to Columbus and chasing a higher salary or some other job they don't know that they could do right here. I mean, we're losing employees to Columbus right now. That's the highest exporter of talent. That's the highest number of talent. You know what I'm saying?
Importer of talent is Columbus. They're importing our talent.
Yes, we're exporting talent to Columbus, right? So there's this there's a data called the inflow-outflow. This is something I look at a lot, which is who's driving to Richland County to work and who's driving out of Richland County to work, and that's where we're losing the most people right now, is Franklin County.
Maybe we can put a tariff on those people that go to work in Columbus.
Yeah.
For gas, got to pay
the county.
Yeah. That sounds like an interesting idea, tariffs.
Thank you.
So the effort that you mentioned at Shelby High School that's a very conscious effort to keep them here, right? Mm-hmm. We don't want them to drive somewhere else. You grew up here. You can live here and make a really good wage and do a job that you're interested in. And there's more of that starting to happen.
I know you mentioned ArcelorMittal, Hayden, but Adina is doing something rather unique. I mean, they basically launched their own private kind of training program. Come to work for us, and we'll teach you and pay you while you're learning. What do you know about that program?
I know they've been working on an internship program, and they're the same thing. They're looking to create that on-the-job training and grab that talent early before it moves away. So it's an effort to grab that market share of interested young people before they go somewhere else. So.
And if you're a young person, and right at the moment it's kind of a pain because it's all torn up, but if you're a young person thinking about a construction career, go down Main Street right now and see what's going on with these guys from Kokosing, because from the north end of Mansfield all the way down to Hanley Road, there's yellow trucks that say Kokosing, and they are doing millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of construction. I mean, it would seem to me that that's a great advertisement for those kinds of companies when they're doing that. I mean, when I have to drive by it every day going down 13, it's a pain in the butt. But what great advertisement for these companies. And it seems like those jobs are going to be there for a long, long time to come.
They are. Construction is not going away. I mean, it's an absolute necessity, whether it be, companies like Kokosing that get those large contracts for road construction, which is always going to happen here because we do so much damage to our roads. And
welcome to Ohio.
Yeah.
We didn't have this problem in South Georgia because it didn't freeze every other day.
When I first moved here, I heard somebody said we have 2 seasons, winter and construction.
Exactly. That's it. Well, see, when I first moved to Ohio, people said, "You sound funny." And I said, "Well, God sounds like I do." I stole that from Louis Grizzard, but it's still a great line. So, all right, we got to switch gears for a second. You have performed in a lot of local music venues over the years, but a couple of years ago, you started a new thing with your Valley Media and Productions company. And you started, I think you're doing the Sunday Songwriter Series at the Spirit Room.
Yes. At
the Phoenix Brewing Company. What was kind of the driving force behind that idea, and has it worked out kind of like you planned it would?
It's been a dream come true. It's a hobby is what it is. It's kind of a, just something that I have always been interested in. So I chased the songwriter dream for a while. I'm not saying I'm done, but I just got to the point where I have 4 kids, so playing on Friday and Saturday night, playing music is not a reality anymore. It's more coaching baseball or going to softball games, and that's where I really want to be. But I am a huge fan of songwriter storytellers and people who do it well. And I grew up being a fan of that at Eddie's Attic in Decatur, which is a kind of a small room where some very famous people got started. Mm-hmm. And they create this environment. Eddie Owen created this environment where there's a banner behind the stage that says, "This is a listening room. If you're in here to give your attention to the performer who's working for you on stage. And if you want to party, go out on the patio, because
I like that.
This is that's what the space is all about. And I just thought that was amazing. That's not a very common thing, As a performer, a lot of times you're in the corner in a bar, and you may have their attention, you may not. You could be just as good as a jukebox, and we know that as performers, but the guys and gals that are out there touring and working to hone their craft and be really good at it, I wanted to create another space where they could have that opportunity, right? So they could have a quiet space where people come to hear them do what they do best. And when the Phoenix was working on the Spirit Room, when they were getting ready to open that, they were working on the remodel, and I actually went down and I said, I had told Scott at the Phoenix already that I was looking for something like that. I wanted to create something like that. So I went down there and I said, "Hey, I heard you're doing this thing upstairs," and he was like, "Yes, we are." And I actually started working to book the first artist before they were even open. Actually, I booked, I think, the first 4 in the series before they were even open. But anyway, it's a listening room. Happens 5 to 6 times a year. I think this year we're going to do 6 or 7. But that's what it was for. It was kind of selfish because I get to book who I want to see, But I wanted to create an audience. I wanted to create a space for those performers, and I wanted to bring something a little bit different into Mansfield. We have a great music scene here that's very diverse, and I kind of wanted to do my part by bringing those troubadours in, right? Those artists that are burning up the highways in their own personal cars, and play in those kind of rooms.
I'm going to throw out a name these guys I'm sure never heard of or wouldn't admit it even if they did, but I saw Harry Chapin once in a small theater in Pittsburgh, and there was, I was blown away. You talk about a guy who's a singer, songwriter, storyteller. This is a guy who couldn't get a song on the radio very often because they were too long. But, I mean, he was at, I think I saw him in 1979 or 1980. I know you guys weren't even born yet, but that's okay. I mean, is that the kind of style that you're looking for, somebody who can not just sing a song but tell a story about something? It's not just
Yeah, that
8 choruses with 5 lyrics in between those 8 choruses.
That is the experience, right? So you as a listener, as the audience, has the opportunity to learn more about what's behind the song. What were you doing when you sat down and put this song together? And that's the opportunity for the artist to do that, because they have a very captive, attentive audience. The most recent show, Matt Rogers, I told him during sound check, I said, listen, I tell people this every time because it's surprising, but when they sit down, like when you get up here and pick the guitar up, you can hear a pin drop in here. Everyone is going to stop talking and look at you. So don't be shocked when that happens.
Right.
And
how do you kind of set up that environment? Like, is it just something that happened naturally, or did you kind of have to like train the audience in a way, or?
I think it just happened naturally.
Yeah.
There are other rooms like this, like Eddie's Attic, and the Bluebird, is probably the most famous in Nashville. And I think that first show, some of the people who were there had been to the Bluebird. And when we were creating the Sunday Songwriter Series, a lot of the people who came to the first show I know personally, so I told them what we were doing, right? What the goal was. And then a little bit of it, a lot of it actually, was who the first artist was, Abe Partridge, who is such an interesting human being in himself and a natural storyteller. It just organically happened that way. And I've told Abe this repeatedly, like he completely set the stage for what this series was going to be, because from being in the in the military to being a fundamentalist preacher to now a songwriter to a visual artist, that's just who he is. And it's kind of like, what am I seeing right now? So he really paved the road for that to be an easy culture, or an easy songwriting room, if that makes sense.
So when's the next show coming up there?
In September, we have Philip Michael Scales, who is born and raised in Chicago, another artist who's just burning up the road. We had Philip in probably about a year and a half ago, and so this is his second time around. But I think it's September 14th, I think, is the date. But that's the next one. We're going to take July and August off. Lots of vacation, a lot of different stuff going on, and the final Fridays are going on. So we're going to take July and August off, and then we'll have that one in September.
How do you what's your process in are you just looking at artists you like indie artists that are smaller and that would come to a place like Mansfield, or what's your process like when you're booking?
So originally in the first series, the first 4 artists I booked, I wanted to be real intentional that it was a very diverse styles. The first Abe Partridge, I discovered him on a podcast. That's how I learned about him. And then I started looking at who was out there. I started looking at other rooms, who was playing where across the country. And then I'll go down a YouTube rabbit hole, and it kind of like, and sometimes one leads to another. Earlier last year I had Eric Erdman and Charlie Argo together, and they were here together. And when I was talking to them, they were like, "Man, do you know Ben Gage? Ben Gage lives in Ohio. Has he played this room? You need to get Ben Gage." So then I got Ben Gage. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Network.
Yeah, it has turned into a crazy network that I never thought I would be.
That's awesome.
Now, does it help, or does it make a difference that you're doing it on Sunday afternoons? And the reason I ask this is there used to be a bar, it's long since closed, up by not far from Tiffin, Ohio, called the Hollow Inn, a little town called McCutcheonville.
Okay.
And they would bring in, at the time, it was a bar. It was not a small venue, but it probably held like 300 or 400 people inside this big bar. But they got big-name country acts on Sunday afternoons who were maybe in between Columbus and Cleveland, or Detroit and Columbus, and they're playing Fridays and Saturdays. We don't have anything booked on Sunday. Well, let's stop and play. I mean, I saw people like Sawyer Brown played there when they were kind of at their zenith. I also saw people like Boxcar Willie, if you want to talk about storytellers, but, I saw Boxcar Willie there. But does it help that you're doing it on Sundays, or does that make a difference?
That was part of the strategy. Like I said, I was really the talent that I was looking for are those artists who were burning up the roads. And it's a small room. So, I mean, we can only get 44 people in there, sell 44 tickets. So typically it's one art. We're not looking for bands, you know. I'm looking for one artist, solo artist. Sometimes we have a duo. I've had folk duos or two people together. But that was the market of performer I was looking for, and I wanted to give them an add-on, right? So those are great markets. Columbus and Cleveland are great markets where a lot of people go and play. And if I could catch them before they get back to Nashville or wherever it is they're going or on to their next thing, having that Sunday afternoon slot, being able to fill that for them, makes it a better opportunity for me to get them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Somebody I wouldn't normally get.
I got one songwriting question before we kind of move off the topic. But when you're writing a song, which comes first, the lyrics or the music?
The chicken and the egg question, here, right? It just depends. It happens both ways, and typically somebody has an idea. I would say more common. Others are going to disagree with me, but I think more common the words. That's the story. The story comes first, and then you put the music under it.
Yeah, I saw a great documentary over the weekend called Making Led Zeppelin.
Oh, I watched that too.
Did you watch that?
Yeah, I did.
That was, I mean, it's too sanitized. It stops after Led Zeppelin 2, their second album, so you don't really get into everything that happened with the band. You know, they kind of mentioned they kind of mentioned drug use at some point, but it was so interesting to watch and listen to Jimmy Page and Robert Plant and
John Paul
Jones talk about what process they had. And I mean, these aren't guys who grew up in the same neighborhood. They all kind of came together to make this band with John Bonham, who, God rest his soul. But it was interesting because when I'm watching this, Jimmy Page was kind of like the main songwriter, but then Robert Plant started saying, well, I could do some writing too. And it's like, okay, well, why don't you write something down? And I don't know whether you were a Led Zeppelin fan. I was, and it was an interesting. In fact, I had tickets to go see Led Zeppelin in Cleveland at Municipal Stadium, and it was about 2 weeks before that John Bonham died.
Oh, wow.
And I held on to that ticket for a long time. It's back in the days when you actually had a copy of the ticket.
Yeah, not on your phone.
Yeah, not in 1980 or 81. They weren't on my phone. But, yeah, I mean, we...
Yeah, I grew up on Led Zeppelin. I'm a drummer. That's what my degree is in, percussion, and so I was a huge Led Zeppelin fan. Obviously, I would never have the opportunity. I wasn't around. I wasn't old enough to go see them. But and that's interesting that you say that, because that's a different kind of writing, right? That genre of music is very different, and a lot of times I feel like the guitar part or whatever may have come first in some of that. Might have been like, hey, I got this, check this out, and then those words that seem to mean nothing come in later. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite songwriting stories involved Leonard Skinner, and they were getting ready to rehearse at what they used to call Hell House, which was a small metal building outside Jacksonville. This is when they were really young. They hadn't done anything of note yet in music. And Ronnie Van Zant came walking into the house one day, this metal house with no windows and no air conditioning. And if you've ever been in Georgia, and actually this was Jacksonville, Florida, so it was even damn hotter. He goes,
pretty much Georgia.
Yeah. Well, he goes walking in, and the guitarist hits the riff from the opening of Sweet Home Alabama. And when Van Zant walks in, Van Zant even at that time owned the band, and he stopped. And Ronnie said, no, hit that again. So you get dun 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 dun. Just do that again. And he did like 3 or 4 times. He goes, you got anything else behind that? He goes, no, that's kind of all I got right now. So Van Zant said, all right, and he walked out the door. He went down by the pond, and the legend has, in about 30 minutes, he came back in with the lyrics for Sweet Home Alabama and said, okay, hit that intro again. and an hour later the song was written musically, lyrically, and everything else. But
yeah, it's crazy how more often than not, some of the most powerful songs, you find out that it happened in like 40 minutes. To the whole process. Like I said, the most recent show at the Spirit Room, Matt Rogers talked about frequently in Nashville in these writers' rooms. There's a process. It's like you go to, like you and I go to our real job, right? That's their real job. They said they wake up at the crack of noon, and then they'll write for 3 hours and work on pieces and parts of 3 different songs, and then they'll break for lunch and then come back and do it again. But sometimes the biggest hits, the things that were the most powerful anthems, they just came in a rush.
It's
right?
like divine inspiration almost. Like some idea, and it's like, oh yeah, this is going to be a hit.
Or when you're not thinking about it too much, maybe that's one of the things I've always considered is that, some of the best writing I feel like I've done was done in 20 or 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I went to one of the times I went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame when they had a Tom Petty. They had a special section set up for Tom Petty, and I think it was American Girl. I'm not exactly sure the song, but there was a cocktail napkin, and he had written the lyrics on a cocktail napkin in a bar one night while he was just in there drinking, and you actually see in the display the cocktail napkin is handwritten where he had written the lyrics, and obviously that came before the music at that point. But I thought, you know what, someday I'm going to sit down and write something on a cocktail napkin, and it's going to be legendary. And then I said, no, I really need to stop doing whatever it is I'm doing that made me think that. So it happens. All right, now we got to shift gears again. Now, one thing I did not know about you until the last week or so, because I don't pay attention very well sometimes, was your love for dirt track racing. Now, to be honest, I didn't know you had a successful podcast on the subject until news broke that Matt Tifft had purchased the former Mansfield Motorsports Speedway, and I heard him on your show. Now, where did that love for dirt racing come from in your life? And tell me about this great podcast I just discovered.
Yeah, it's another one of those things that just kind of happened. I got really interested in podcasting, I think probably when Pat McAfee was starting his, because he was on the radio. I can't remember the show he was on the radio, but and then he started his own podcast, and I was thinking, man, I'm from the South. I like to talk. I think I could do this, and I didn't know what I was going to do. So that's part of the question. The other part of the question is I am from South Georgia. I grew up at a racetrack. My dad's side of the family was into drag racing. My dad's brother owned a drag racing car. My mom's side of the family was the dirt track side and NASCAR. So I was surrounded by it. I was at the dirt track at the Thunder Bowl in Valdosta, Georgia, is where I grew up.
All right. Now there's some great high school football right there.
Yeah, Valdosta. Yeah, that was my cross county rival.
I'm sorry to hear that. I bet you didn't win many.
We've won more recently than we did.
All right, yeah.
Colquitt County was where I went to high school, but so that and my uncles and cousins racing go-karts, so we were at the go-kart track. I mean, I'm from South Georgia, so but the craziest thing is I watched on, I think it was on ESPN, they called it Thursday Night Thunder when I was a kid. And I got to see winged sprint cars for the first time on TV.
Right.
And it was a broadcast from Eldora, which is here in Ohio.
Right.
And I fell in love with the way, just the science and the engineering of how those cars worked. But they didn't come through Georgia, right? We didn't have any sprint cars in Georgia. We had what they call late models, which is more like a stock car.
Right.
But the sprint cars, have this huge wing on top, this aerodynamic package, small tires in the front, big tires in the back, and they go through the turns sideways. And I was just fascinated by it. Little did I know, 30 years later, I was going to be living in the middle of sprint car country, surrounded by Wayne County Speedway and Attica and Eldora, Hilltop, and all these tracks. So, and then Mansfield Motor Speedway opened back up not long after I lived here. And I had met another race fan from Bucyrus. His name's Jacob Horde. And he was really active on Twitter. Surprisingly, Twitter is the platform for dirt track racing.
Okay.
That's where you get all the updates and all the stuff. It's Twitter, but most of the activity most of the dirt track racing activity happens on Twitter. Anyway, so we had crossed paths. I joked that we met online, but it was Twitter. And then we happened to end up sitting next to each other at Mansfield Motor Speedway. But we decided to start the podcast to help promote the reopening of Mansfield Motor Speedway when it went to dirt,
Right.
with when Cody Summer had it, and Jacob Nord was the track manager out there, not Jacob Horde, who's my co-host on the podcast. So anyway, that's where it started, and we were just going to do it to help promote and push the reopening of the track, and here we are 7 years later, I think.
Still
Something
going.
like that. Yeah, still going. I don't think either of us expected that. Since we started it, we created the website ohiodirt.com, and Jacob is really he's really the journalist. I do more of the back end work, like managing the recording of the podcast and things like
Right.
that, and some of the talking. But he's gone on and he's been on other national shows, and he's a true race fan, and he even works at Attica at the track now. So it's been an interesting progression.
Yeah, I got to say, when I was a kid, we lived in Brunswick, Georgia, and then we moved across the coast to Albany, Georgia. At least that's what they called it at the time, coast to coast. But if you're a kid in South Georgia, at least at the time I was there were three sports. There was dirt track racing, there was stock car racing, and there was pro wrestling. I mean, Atlanta's so far. People say, what about the Falcons? I'm like, well, Atlanta's so far away from where I was living. It might as well have been New York City. I didn't associate with the Braves. I didn't associate with the Falcons because I don't know how the hell to even get to Atlanta from where I was at the time. But yeah, that love for when I was a kid, it was Richard Petty and Cale Yarborough and the Allison brothers and that famous Daytona 500 back when the race wasn't even shown live. I think it was on tape, but they had the fight when the Allison brothers took out Cale Yarborough on the last lap of the race. And they had a wreck, and one of the Allisons wrecked with Cale, and he got out of his car, and he ran over, and he ripped down the netting, and he starts, I think it might have been live at them, starts punching Allison through the window, what would be a window, just a netting at the time, and that's when all of a sudden NASCAR went nationwide. It was because of the day Cale Yarborough beat the crap out of one of the Allison brothers, because then the other one came around and stopped, and they finally broke the fight up. But yeah, if you grow up in the South, there's two things: college football and stock car racing.
Right, and that kind of stuff is still happening in NASCAR.
And the Dirt Track podcast, you got merch on your website, and
We
how
have-
many listeners? You guys have a lot of listeners, like around. Is it Ohio-based, a lot of your audience, or just all around the world? Do you guys cover dirt track races from everywhere?
So yeah, when we started, our goal was just to, like I said, it was focused on Mansfield Motor Speedway, and then we started covering the region or all of Ohio. Obviously, it's in the name, so our focus was Ohio. But because of the circuits that come through Ohio, and we have so many drivers that live in Ohio or from Ohio, we started covering the circuits as they travel, whether it be the All-Star Circuit of Champions or the World of Outlaws or whatever it is. We do talk about stuff that happens nationally. So to answer your question about the listeners, strangely enough, there's a huge dirt track society in Australia.
Wow.
And specifically wing sprint cars. And so we have listeners in Australia. We have listeners in Alaska. I just saw some in Germany. I don't know. I mean, you get that data, when you post a podcast and you look at it and you go, who are you?
Are these bots?
Yeah, and I've actually said that on the show multiple times. Like, if you are in, if you're in Germany, I want to know who you are.
Let us know
right?
you're a real person.
Yeah, we want to talk to you. And we've had multiple theories. That could be military, American military. It could be international listeners. I have no idea, but yeah, it's been kind of wild. When we started out, we were looking at, our early episodes were getting like 65, 70 listens, something like that. And then after a couple years, we had Kyle Larson on and Mario Andretti.
Okay.
And that opened up a whole nother ball game.
Sure.
I'll tell you, this most recent one with Matt Tift has the most downloads of any show we've done in 7 years.
Wow. I am insanely jealous. I have messaged Matt on every social media platform I can find to try to get him on this podcast. So I'm very jealous that you guys got him first. And it was a great interview, by the way. So give me your impressions of Matt Tift. I read Kurt Conrad's story last week while I was on vacation. I listened to your podcast. It sounds like he's got some big plans for the 180-acre facility. But you've also got a business background during your day job, Clint. So what's it going to take to bring this track back to life in terms of time and money? And how comfortable are you that Matt's going to be able to do this? I mean, I guess owning track, who owns Eldora?
Tony Stewart.
Tony Stewart. Obviously, Dave Blaney's involved. So NASCAR racers like to own tracks. That's nothing really new there. But talk about your interview with Matt and what do you think about his future out there?
I think Matt has a very good business plan. I think he has intentions of involving the community. I mean, one of the things we talked about on the podcast is that this community loves that racetrack, and it hurts us to see it the way it has been for the last 3-4 years. I don't even know. Maybe I think it's longer than that, but I think Matt has great ideas of diversifying the use of the facility and bringing in, he calls it a car culture, not just a dirt track, right? He's got, all the ideas of having drifting competitions, car shows. He didn't talk to us about this because our podcast was a dirt track podcast, but he's got big plans for a Christmas light display, like a drive-through Christmas light display. So he's going to be very intentional about involving it sounds like based on what he's saying, he's going to be intentional of creating a community experience, not just having 2 or 3 NASCAR races where thousands of people come from out of town, but he wants to make sure that this region and this community has a place there, right? A seat at the events. And something that we can drive 15 minutes to go experience.
There's a business plan that is just racing. I mean, I helped cover the first NASCAR Truck Series race out there, Memorial Day weekend, that I think it was 35 degrees outside, or it certainly seemed like it. When Cody Summer owned the place, I don't think a guy could have worse luck than he did in terms of weather, because you'd have a big sanctioned race night, and floodgates would open, and it would get rained out or be delayed till after midnight. And if you just have a dirt track that doesn't have other things, and you become weather dependent, that's not a very good business model for Ohio in the spring and summer, is it?
Well, I mean, that is the nature of dirt track racing. We a couple episodes ago we addressed this because people like to get on social media, which can be very damaging to anything, right? It's a powerful platform, and anytime something goes wrong at a dirt track, people like to get on and say, why didn't they put more water on the track? Or why did they put water on the track? Why did they get out there and do this and that? I mean, it's natural elements. Like, if you're a dirt track fan, you got to come understanding that. If you go to a Friday night football game in Ohio, you're going to be cold, right? It's gonna, it's gonna.
Yeah, it's no different.
You go to a dirt track race,
These guys know
you're going to get dirty, and it might rain. You know, it's just, it is what it is. And that, like you mentioned, Cody, that experience there was very unlucky because of specifically that second year of weather.
Right.
But it's that I think that is part of to Matt's plan. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but ensuring that you have other sources of revenue and other opportunities for people to be there, right? If he runs 2 or 3 or 4 races a year, then that'll be awesome. You know, everybody that grew up out there, or their parents grew up out there, you know, that's a great opportunity. But if they can go to a concert out there, or they can go drive through Christmas lights, you know, it's still an awesome experience for them. It's another opportunity, right? And it's not not solely weather dependent.
And hopefully when he redoes the track, he brings in, and I don't know the right description for it, whether it's clay, whether it's dirt, because the last time I covered a race there was a sprint car, and I was standing between turns 3 and 4, and I don't know how many times I was dodging rocks. And I mean, not little pebbles. I mean, there were some chunks coming. And when you're taking pictures and you're focusing on cars and you feel something blow by your head, I'm like, this. I know it's dirt, but oh my goodness, the rocks and stuff that were coming out of that.
Yeah, I will tell you, I have talked to race fans from all over the country. And specifically, you know, Cody Summer has an indoor event in St. Louis now called Dirt in December.
Okay.
In a coliseum, they build a track inside.
Wow.
That's what when you lose the weather, that's what you do.
Yeah.
You go rent an entire dome, and you create something different. And it's huge. It's one of the biggest dirt track races in the country on a very small track in a building. It's got a whole like wrestling vibe. It is amazing what he's done. Anyway, I was there. I got the chance to go cover that for the podcast this past year. My son and I went, and Jacob went too. And we were talking to people in line at the concession stand. They were, "Where are you from?" You know, well, we're from the Mansfield area. And they're like, "Oh, where the rocks were busting the windows." And I mean, these guys were like, they were from Texas.
Yeah.
You know, and that it's an unfortunate name, but people, I say that to say people from all over the country came to those events, and and that track has an incredible name, and unfortunately everybody knows about the rocks from that night.
At least they remember it.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I definitely remember it.
So to answer your original question, which is where do you get the surface, I specifically asked him that question on the podcast, and he's going to bring in clay. The plan is to bring in clay, and what he said on the podcast was that Attica has done a really good job of their resurfacing over the last couple of years, so he's going to go to them and find out what they did and kind of follow that model. So that was he would like to talk to them and kind of follow that model. So I think race fans can expect anything would be an improvement on what it looks like right now in current state. But
I've watched the two kind of feature-length YouTube videos that Matt has posted, and it is like a little trip back in time.
Yeah.
When you go inside the concession stands and you go inside the, it was really interesting when he went inside the room where the 3 generators.
I had no. I think Jacob Nord, when he worked there, told me that they were out there, but I didn't have any idea what size they are and that they could
power the whole place.
Yeah, the story behind that is fascinating too. You know, he talked about the original owner had a disagreement with the power company. He's like, well, I'll just create my own power. I'll just buy a bunch of generators, massive diesel generators, in case you shut me down. But I'll just crank them up,
Fire them up.
turn the lights back on, and get back to racing.
And I mean, I love going to that track. Even the when they had the Truck Series race, even though it was freezing cold outside, there were 20,000 people who came to Mansfield, Ohio. It was on national television. And I know Matt doesn't have plans for that right now. He wants to do local things like that. But, I mean, it is outstanding to have not only the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course, but to have that facility up and running, because in terms of attracting tourism and visitors, there's no place in Ohio that can offer Mid-Ohio and the Mansfield Motorsports Speedway at the same time. I mean, it would be wonderful to see those guys, those two organizations, maybe even work together more than we've seen in the past.
Yeah, I think we have. I said it earlier that we have a really good music culture here, but we also have a really good motorsports culture in this area and in the history of this area. You know, we talk about it being a NASCAR coming to the track, but I mean it was a dirt track originally,
Right.
And there are drivers who their families raced on that, their grandfathers grew up racing on that track. So It's going to be a powerful thing to have both of them operating again, and I say Mid Ohio is still operating, but having both tracks here, and it's going to attract a lot of people, because people who had never been here before and came when the Sprint Car World Championship was there, or the Dirt Million was there when Cody.
Right.
I mean, Cody did a lot for Mansfield.
Those were big races.
Yeah, his promotions were pretty powerful. And so they kind of doubled down on what had already been done, and I think Matt sees the opportunity there. Another thing I said to him on the podcast was I think that the hardest work for him is going to be moving dirt. It's not going to be getting people back in there, because the people are going to come, and just because of the history of the track. And you mentioned the podcast. If you follow Matt Tifft, TIFFT, on YouTube, his YouTube channel, he's doing a really good job of dropping weekly videos that speak to a lot of that history. Right? He's obviously done his homework and learned a lot about where that track came from, because he knows more than I do, and he's only been around for a few months or however long it's taken him to do the buying process. So that's impressive in itself. And he's doing a really good job of telling the story,
and he's good on social media. I mean, he's 28 years old. He grew up at a time, or came of age at a time when that's a big thing.
Has it always been a dirt track?
It was originally a dirt track.
It was originally, and then they put asphalt, and then now it's back to dirt.
Right?
Maybe.
Yes.
Or no?
Yes.
I don't know.
Well, right now it's back to trash. So I mean,
right. But Matt wants to do a dirt track for like the first couple years, right? And then potentially.
Yeah.
Is there a way that you like? Are there some venues that do both?
Yes.
Like you have two tracks.
There are. I can't think of one. I can't think of a good example right now, but potentially yes, there could be. Have an asphalt track on the outside and a dirt track on the inside. I know that exists. So well, I mean, there's a dirt track inside Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Okay. They only use it for like 2 events a year. But yes, that's possible. I don't know if this one's big enough for that or not. It could be. But they did an interesting thing with Bristol Motor Speedway 4 or 5 years ago. They covered it up with dirt.
Yeah, I watched that race. I was not. I was intrigued, but I'm like, because the dirt starts rubbing off and.
That's the thing. It's not the natural organic surface, so it creates a whole nother set of problems. I went to that race.
I was just watching it on TV.
And this podcast has afforded us some crazy things.
Yes.
Like not only did I go
absolutely.
not only did I go to that race, but I stood on top of the infield media center. I had full media access.
Nice.
They ran more than one, so I went to see the World of Outlaws and what they call the modifieds. But yes, so to answer the short, that's a long way to answer your question. You can put dirt on top of asphalt and then uncover it. It's a lot of work, and it depends on a lot of things. You cover something up with dirt, it's got to be. I've never done it, but I'm assuming that it has to be a really thick layer, because if it rains, this is going to wash off.
Seems expensive,
and then you've wasted all your money. Yeah,
seems like it's Matt's going to kind of lean into take it slow and in phases with Mansfield Motor.
Well, it seems like if I remember when my interviews with Cody back at the time, the idea behind taking it back to dirt was you open up far more racing opportunities, because a lot of these guys who race at Attica or Eldora, they're dirt track racers.
Right.
And if you have a dirt track, those guys are going to come, whereas if you just have an asphalt track, now you're severely limiting, because those guys that race on Saturday nights on other dirt tracks, they're not going to come. They're not set up. They're not asphalt racers.
Right.
So it limits the amount of things you can bring in.
Yeah, and there are asphalt tracks in Ohio. I'm really not part of that community. I don't go, so I don't know where they're all from. But I know there are car owners in Ohio that have asphalt setups, and I know there's some of them have done both, go back and forth. But I don't know how big that community is really. Certainly here, the largest is is going to be dirt, right? You know, there's literally a car on it. Ryan Prosser, one of our, you know, years of owning a sprint car in the area, lives across the road from Mansfield Motor Speedway. So nobody's more excited than Ryan is, I'm sure. But yeah, there's more. There's going to have more participation, regional, local, state participation if it's dirt, in my opinion.
I know he mentioned on one of those videos about maybe, obviously years ago there was talk about adding a drag strip out there, which the EPA kind of stopped that because there was a drainage ditch and the EPA got involved, so that didn't happen. One of the things Matt talked about was maybe an 1/8 of a mile drag strip, and the only thing I could think is maybe we could do that, and all the people that like to go cruising up and down the Miracle Mile during the summer, they could go out and race at that drag strip, and we could stop having to put landing strips.
Could
out
be
in the
another
middle of the
revenue
road.
stream. I mean, small admission fee.
Yeah. I mean, why not? To put up
make it less than a speeding ticket.
Yeah, less than a speeding ticket. That's a topic for a whole nother day, the landing strips out on the Miracle Mile. But all right, Clint, anything else you want to tell us about going on in your life? Because there's a few things. So,
no, I think we covered most of it.
all right, well, next time we have you in, we're going to have you bring your guitar, and we're going to have you sing some songs for us while you're
Ohio
here.
Dirt Track Podcast, right?
Oh yeah,
Go check it out.
Yeah.
We
If
will
you're
put
a
a
racing fan.
We'll put a link to that in the show notes, and your traffic will grow by at least 0.5% once our audience comes flocking over. But all right, folks, we're going to wrap up today's show on that note. Many thanks to the Renaissance man, Clint Knight, for joining us today. Thanks to all of you again for listening to the Newsman Weekly. I'll be back in a second to put that bow on this week's episode. But until then, remember what Mark Twain said. If you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything.